Sometime back, I picked up this 1988 Sportster. It was the cheapest one on Facebook Marketplace at the time. Will it start? I'm old school, and this is vintage Harleys Revived. Well, the first thing to do is get it up on the lift and get a good look at it. I've not done that yet, so we'll do that together. There's been a lot of hands in this bike. Just an initial look around has shown me some things that I can tell there's been more than one person that has had their hands on this bike, and the tires are rotted and it's dirty, like it's been sitting under a tree or at best in a barn with a bad roof and a dirt floor. As I look around, I am beginning to wonder if this was a good idea. And then I glance up at the speedometer. It says 3,600 miles. Well, I'm starting to think that I might just want the motor on this bike, and at 3,600 miles, it shouldn't be too bad. So what I'm doing here is not what I would call, your standard, I'm going to do it right kind of crap. What I need to know about this motorcycle is, will it start? Does it have compression? This is loose. Does it have inside this primary what I'm going to need to be able to put the starter on it and actually put power to it and get the damn thing to start? That is what I need to do. So here we go. We'll pull the primary cover off. Make sure everything's tight in place. Chain's good. Go ahead and snap a pair of vice grips on it and run it through the gears. There's first gear. There's neutral. There's second. There's third. And with a little help, I finally get it in fourth, and it's all there, and everything seems to be tight and at least serviceable. So I go grab the bucket of random parts. That carb's only got 3,600 miles on it. We ought to be able to make that work. There's the starter down in the bottom of the bucket, and it's got some rough spots there. The threads are spun out of it. That's the hole where that bolt will go in. Well, let's go ahead and throw it up on the bench, grab a battery and some jumper cables, and give this boy a test. Reach down, grab myself something to short it across so we can see if the bendings will throw out and if the thing will turn. And it seems to be at least doing that without a problem. So I think the idea here is I'll go ahead and throw this old starter in, thinking there's probably an issue. I mean, they wouldn't have the starter out of it. It's just not that easy to do. You got to take the primary apart, and it's stripped out. So I'm thinking they thought that it was beyond help. I'm hoping that it's good enough, at least, if I get it bolted in there, to allow me to give this bike a compression test. Of course, you got to remove the side case, or at least loosen it enough that you can slip it down in there, bolt things up tight. Of course, I got no key, so I'm going to have to hotwire it. I'll take all the wires off the ignition switch that I don't have a key to, and then pull the plugs out of it to ready it to do the compression test. And you know what? I remember something. When I got that cheap knockoff carburetor, that thing had a couple of Vickman spark plugs in it and you know, by golly, they're the right ones for this bike. Couple of squirts of Weasel in each cylinder just to lube things up because it's sat for so long. Put a new connector on the end of this wire. I'll tell you, every single wire on this thing seems to have had somebody's hands on it, and they're cut and twisted and broke. And I don't want to buy a new battery for it. I don't want to buy a new starter for it till I know that the thing has at least got compression. We'll throw it on this old battery, use a set of jumper cables, check the lights work, and take a pair of vice grips and hot wire them all together, insulate it with a glove, and then we'll test the starter. And what do you know? You push that button and we've got 12 volts coming to the starter. I think we need to check the oil. It has none. We add some oil until it does, because I don't want to start it without any oil. I threw a pair of pliers underneath the adjuster so there wasn't too much slack in that primary chain. So let's give it a shot, see what happens. Well, 50 PSI, but only one time around, and I checked connections, tried it again, and it won't even turn the thing over. Smack it with a hammer a few times and no change, so pretty sure it needs a starter. So here I am 1 week later. I've ordered a starter, I've ordered a primary gasket kit, I've ordered better connections from my battery to the bike, and I've ordered a new ignition switch. So I got my Moto Iron universal ignition switch. Going to install this in on the original bracket, kind of bolted up temporary so we can use the key switch instead of a pair of vice grips and a glove. I want to make a permanent solution for getting power to these old bikes, so I went to Amazon, got some cables, got some different terminals, got a boat battery cutoff terminal for the positive, hooked everything up to the car battery that I have. I can make good, tight, clean connections and not worry if I've got good power to whatever it is I'm trying to power up. So I go ahead here and flip the key switch on and the light comes on, even the bright and dim works. So I'll go ahead and use my new cutoff switch to cut the power to the starter, get all the wires removed, take the bolts out, which don't come out very easy, both because the threads are ruined and because I used a non-standard bolt where you should use a button head bolt or a cap head bolt, which I've got going. We'll use this plate that goes between the case and the starter. Get the new starter out, take a good look at it, compare it to the other one. It's pretty doggone close to the same, maybe identical. Just check to make sure everything fits as it should. Clean the base, which is a little tight to get in there, but you can get it nice and shiny so you've got a good connection. Drop this new starter in, which is kind of a trick because once you get it in there, you got to get everything lined up. But, you know, just be kind of careful and get it done. Make sure your bolts go in straight. I got some new cap head bolts that fit. So we've got a nice tight mount, a good connection. So now we'll kind of tight down in here. I use a pair of needle nose and get everything tightened up. So I turn the power back on, turn the key switch on, hit the button, and it rolls over no problem. So we got the ignition in it and we set up our battery and we got our new starter in, and this thing's working just as I would expect it to. And it's turning over well and it appears to have compression. It's blowing out the spark plug holes as soon as I hit it. We're gonna clean everything up on the primary and put the primary cover on it and put some lubrication into this, because the transmission in these Sportsters, as I'm sure most of you know, shares the lubrication with the primary oil. I'm going to start to run a compression test, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to get this bike started, and I don't want to do that without any lubrication in the transmission. Been sitting for years and years and years and years, who knows how many years, with no lubrication in the transmission. So I would say there's no residual lubrication left in the transmission gears and bearings and so forth. And I've turned it just about as much as I want to turn it. We're going to go about putting this primary back together. So here we go, cleaning everything up, making sure all the gasket surfaces are clean and smooth. Get the inside of the primary cover cleaned. I see right here it's been welded. It looks to be a pretty decent job. So we're going to run all the threads. They're full of RTV, old gasket material. Some of them have been cross-threaded, and I'm sure that's what held somebody up as they were trying to put it back together. Getting this shifter out of the way. I'm not going to use it. Run the last bolt hole and then blow everything out with air. Put the gasket up onto the engine case. I went to the hardware, got some cap bolts that work. This adjuster screw is screwed in sideways. The threads are all messed up, so I run it until it goes through no problem. Slip the primary case on, put the bolts in. Be careful you don't over tighten them. And now make a primary or initial adjustment on the primary chain of a 1/2 inch. I'm looking for the last fine thread bolt that I need or nut, and then I'm gonna put a new sealing washer on it, make sure that the plug is tight, put the Dexron 3 in it, and no leaks. Go ahead and clean out these inspection caps and get everything put back together. Man, this is the long way around the barn, but we're about to get there as we put the compression tester back on it, put the power to it, and go ahead and hit the button, and there we go. We got almost 130 psi in the front. Man, oh man, we got 175 in the rear. Let's throw the spark plugs in this thing, the Vickman spark plugs that came with the knockoff carburetor. You know, it's really easy to cross thread these things and don't over tighten them. They'll spin out in the head. Hey, we got spark on the front cylinder. The rear plug wire is jacked. Somebody stuck something in there, so I tightened it up. And yeah, we got spark on the rear. Okay, let's throw the carburetor on there. These old hoses get hard over 20 years of time, 30 years of time. Make a really quick carburetor holder out of a couple of bolts and a zip tie. I got my Temu $18 IV fuel kit here. We're going to throw that together real nice, which is cool because we can know that we've got a good fuel source. Here's some clean fuel. We're going to hang that thing up, turn the fuel on, and what do you know? The carb fills up no problem. Okay, let's turn the power back on, turn the key switch on, check the accelerator pump is squirting fuel into the carburetor. I'm old school. Be good to yourself. We'll see you next time on Vintage Harleys Revive.